in Hanoi, and we go between. I guess our staff go between Vietnam and the Philippines as well. So I'm obviously Australian, live in Australia probably half the time, a quarter of the time in Vietnam, and a quarter of the time I don't know where I am. I'm just all around the place, similar to Renz. So yeah, I guess that gives a little bit of background. And our first game was in Web3 for the studio. We were blessed enough to be quite popular back in 2021, 2022. And since then, we're just building 3 more games, hopefully shipping them towards the end of this year.
Very nice.
Yeah, hey Ryan, and nice to meet you. So yeah, I mean, just like Corey actually started BreederDAO like as a Web3 company, right? And initially started off with Axie Infinity, or really just focus on like asset creation. Started off, the idea of like decentralized gaming with playable characters, and so did a bunch of like Axie characters as well. Eventually, also did the same for like Pegaxy and a bunch of other games, right? And right now, what we're seeing is that the different components of like gaming is also already being decentralized as well. And we're now moving away from just the idea of giving out the decentralization aspect on the playable characters, but also expanding it to other areas like content, lore, and the like. And specifically for us, we're actually touching on like asset creation. So the next focus after playable characters, which is what we're still doing even until now, is now in the skins and wearables part. But yeah, overall, like the goal for us is to be able to touch on like asset customization and creation, being able to allow users to generate their own content and then plug those back into the game or into the virtual worlds of their own choosing. So yeah.
Interesting. So I guess for your guys' background, I'm not anything of a huge tech guy or gamer or anything like that. However, my background is more in journalism, so I think where I lack in knowledge of gaming, I think my journalistic senses help me to kind of ask the right questions and also study things unbiased in an unbiased way, and kind of take them for face value, where I think maybe any other conversation with another really niche gamer might have certain questions that would dive deeper. So excuse me if I'm a little behind, but what I understand so far is that in the gaming world, like you guys just said, that is just starting to get a little bit more customized, and people are kind of understanding what they can do and how they can impact the game. So, and as I also know, you guys have worked together for the game. How do you say it? Pegaxy or?
Yeah, both ways. Pegaxy, whatever's most comfortable.
So where did you guys, I guess, first kick off that idea of, a game that, the user can have more of an influence on, and also how does that relate to, the current technology and, as I understand it, the crypto world?
Sure. Some context, me and Renz actually met, like the two companies, I guess, met naturally because of another product that Renz was working on with BreederDAO. I guess their initial product back in 2022. So it just aligned with what we were also building in this space. We didn't so much need to work directly with each other. However, it was just in our favor to be friendly because we are in the space. But of course, they had a large shift towards, I guess, user-generated content, not so much in what you would expect UGC to be with videos and stuff like that, but just straight up in-game user-generated content. And for us, I think UGC is hard to deny at this point when you look forward, how much influence it does have on other players' retention and stuff. So it was a pretty obvious thing for us to work with someone like BreederDAO, especially with the backing that they have, how capable their team is, and being friendly with the founders as well is obviously going to be helpful because you're able to understand their vision much clearly because you can spend time with them and understand what they want to build. So it just aligned with what we thought was the future, I must admit. But in Renz's perspective, I think we are just one of many in his large catalog. So I'm sure he can give a much broader perspective.
Yeah, I guess I just met Corey at the height of his popularity, right? Where he didn't even bother like chatting with me until I actually showed up at his event and I actually cornered him. But yeah, overall, I think like Corey is one of the few founders who actually was able to showcase the power of like Web2, right? So, you know, everything that we're actually building here aren't anything new. From the previous I guess iterations of like gaming, we've already seen how people actually, grinds and then actually sell their accounts, right? And the early stage of what we call like play to earn just made it so that, instead of having to sell like these accounts for profit, you can actually just sell the assets themselves, right? And I guess like the idea of like creating these characters isn't also entirely new, right? But what's entirely new is that the ability to actually give that person that ownership back to the users, right? And that actually created like a huge change because as a consequence to being able to own the asset, then you're able to also, in a way, um, transact using the asset, right? Buying and selling these assets, which kind of created that entire loop where users farm like these certain tokens that are necessary to be able to create or generate more of these assets, right? And that was like the initial generation, right? So yeah, I think for us, like even the UGC component, right? You see, for example, Roblox decentralizing content, allowing developers to create their own like idea or create their own games, right? And then you've seen the likes of Zelda already becoming popular because of the UGC aspect in an open world situation, right? And
Okay.
what we're seeing is that there's actually, I guess, like a shift towards allowing people to create like different contents. Because what we've seen is that there's a bunch of stuff that users or the community can actually do that developers didn't even think about from the get-go, right? And giving that power back to the user in the form of like them being able to own and then being able to get rewarded for creating these kinds of content is something that blockchain is enabling us in a better manner or in a more efficient manner, and ultimately that's what's unique, and that's what we're seeing right now, hence why there is also a lot of adoption in terms of the use of like blockchain, and I guess like generally the idea of like or the concept of like NFTs and whatnot.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the big thing that everyone can understand, whether you're a gamer or you've just a passive gamer or just on the side, is that a lot of the like for social media is a good example of most of the user's interaction with that is just building the platform itself or furthering whatever advertising they have going or anything like that, and kind of just building the Instagrams or the Facebooks or the Meta or whatever. Where you guys are at, as I understand it, is not only is the game growing and the technology growing, but the users are actually taking away an asset, like you said, that is theirs and can be monetized, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what? It's a big shift, I think. And where do you guys see that going over the next 5? I mean, things go so fast. Maybe 5,
Sure.
if not 10 years.
I think, for at least from my perspective, maybe Renz has a different perspective here. However, I feel that the more time that we've spent here building, the more natural it seems to have become. The closer it is blending to just what people are used to in the traditional gaming space as well. Initially, back in 2021, I think most people in this space would be able to attest to this. It felt as if we had discovered something new. It felt as if we had just changed gaming forever. well, we learned the hard way that is definitely not what happened. It was a bit of a false signal for sure. And I feel that we have done is just allow a new experience within what already existed, which is taking something from within a game that you may love so much, and seeing a user who wants it and being able to say, do you want to buy it? Something like that, right? It's a very simple experience, but it's just something that hasn't really happened before. And there's still so many kinks right now. Like, to be completely honest with you, that makes an economy inside of a game exceptionally difficult to build. And it's probably why we haven't seen it in such a mainstream scenario. Also, it will depend on what type of game you have. If you have a casual game, if you have a hardcore game, very different economies as well. So how these users interact with each other, if they want to, yeah, I think, I guess to answer the question, in 5 years, I'm not sure where we will be, but it'll make a lot more sense. However, I'm not too sure if it will be as revolutionary as we once thought. I think it will be much more natural and highly adopted, which means there's still a lot of money to be made. It'll just feel as if nothing really changed. It'll just be a natural progression from my perspective.
Yeah, I actually agree with Corey a lot with regards to, initially we thought that, we're actually introducing something that's groundbreaking, but only to realize that, these are actually things that have already existed, just packaged in a different way, right? The monetization part of like these assets in game is actually just one of the facets or one of the applications that I feel like people have now discovered, right? Or being able to like, sell these assets to another person, right? But now that humans or like the community actually own their assets, right? There's a lot of things that they can do. In fact, there are discussions where the original IP may or like the IP that I currently have with my asset right now can even outlive its original creator. Um, Previously, it was entirely up to developers to actually develop and build on top of like these assets. Now you're seeing all sorts of like adoption in terms of like assets being converted to merch being created as like brands, right? And even assets or the same IPs being used for or to build other games, right? And these other games may become more popular than the original ones, right? So that created like a new way of like thinking about like these assets, these IPs, which used to be didn't exist, right? Because developers were actually the sole owners of like the IPs. They decide what they want to do, if they want to create like merch, if they want to create like alternative stories or like comic books for that one, right? It creates like a new shift because now you're allowing people to also participate, right? And I guess like maybe to add to what Corey said, I do agree with him that 5 years, 10 years is actually a bit hard to pinpoint where we're going. But the point of the matter is that right now we're at the early stages where we're trying to experiment what exactly blockchain do have to offer, like with regards to gaming, right? Is it really about like decentralizing the creation of these assets? Is it really about like giving power back to community in terms of determining like where the game would go with the governance system that are being introduced within games? Do we want like community to have a say in terms of how the story would evolve for these games? Or do we just like entirely leave it up to them to actually develop the next chapters of the content, right? So there's a lot of things that are unsure with blockchain, but the point of the matter is that they allow for these things to happen. And it's an interesting experiment because we don't know, because it's the first time that we're seeing this. We don't know where it's headed. We don't know like if people would actually buy into it or not, or like if it's a concept that will be sustainable in the future. But yeah, overall, like it's a pretty nice experiment. It's a pretty like application and a pretty nice like development.
Yeah, it's really exciting, especially where you guys are at. I don't know, you guys seem like around my age. I'm 27 years old, but what about you guys?
26.
I'm same age as you, at least for now. Probably gonna be older soon.
You guys are old.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's cool to see people of our generation that are now starting to enter this, I guess, bigger impact area of professional, their own professional industry and carving their way. But I guess where I guess we need a little bit more info is how you guys really got here. I mean, what got you, Corey, to making, creating this game and this gaming company, and then for Renz, what got you to, this software or this blockchain element that you guys have created?
Yeah, it's a great question. It definitely was not planned. I'll put it that way. But I think it came from just pure interest. So 2017 was the first time I dove into crypto. That was typical ICO phase. Maybe people are not familiar with that, but it was basically a startup company and they'll sell some tokens and you try to make some money. And I was putting about $100 in and I would lose about $300 a week, half my salary, trying to get rich. So that's how I got exposed to it. But it was just like a side thing that I was really interested in and I paid attention to while I focused on my other career at the time, back then, which was e-commerce. We're very blessed to be successful in that one. And then I just decided to come back and look at what was happening in the space. And I think it was the end of 2020. NFTs were just starting to make a little bit of a wave. There was a platform called OpenSea, which is where you buy and sell them, just like a marketplace. And I saw one that was for F1, like Formula One. And I was like, sweet, I love Formula One. I want to lose some money. Let's buy it. So spent a couple grand on that. Played the game. It was super early. So what I decided to do, because I wanted to invite some friends to play, but because it was so early, they didn't have any tutorials. I made a video so that I could just send it to them so I don't need to explain it. It got like 50,000 views or something like that. And one of those viewers was my co-founder. And he was like, do you want to build this game? And I was like, no. Obviously, I don't know how to build a game. Like, I'm just playing the game. But he just kept talking to me and I was like, all right, let's give it a go. So initially, honestly, I came in as CMO. The CEO position came maybe 8 months in. And from there, yeah, obviously we saw what we liked in the market. We saw what was moving. We adopted what was succeeding or initially catching traction. And also we shipped the product very, very quickly. We had great timing. We did solve a problem. We provided a solution to a big problem at the time. And yeah, that's $200 million goes to a 2D horse racing game. It was pretty wild at that period of time, I must admit. Looking back, obviously, it's even more insane in hindsight. But right now, obviously, we're much more comfortable because of that. Yeah, I'll pass over to Renz.
Yeah, so I actually dabbled with crypto as well, like Corey, back in 2017, but only just, trying to make huge profits, right? First heard about it by my friend or with my friend, right? Earning like, 1,000x on a token that I didn't even know of, right? And so I was like, how can I like, be like you and like earn like that much as well at a young age, right? So yeah, bought like a few of the shit coins, right? Was earning a lot, was able to multiply my funds like 3x in just like a few months. And I'm like, I'm not getting this in stocks, right? For context, my background was in consulting that back then. And so, everything and even equities, right? I was very much fascinated by the world of like finance. So yeah, and then like there came like, 2018 where, I guess like I lost like what 99% of my portfolio, and I was like, you know what, just leave it there. Maybe like the next run, it's gonna be 1,000x, and I'll just be happy, and I'll just retire, right? But that did happen. So in 2020, when I first heard about like Axie Infinity, I was like, you know what, like this makes so much sense, right? I know a few people who have been buying like a lot of like these accounts because they want to get like these characters, right? And so, myself, I've been like an avid gamer for the longest time, and free to play gacha. That gacha component actually really got me. Um, I'm the type of big gamer who would want to like collect all of these characters, especially when I love or when I feel attached to like these characters or to the game themselves. So yeah, the idea of like being able to own your assets and then eventually like sell them if you get tired of them really appealed to me, and so I started playing Axie Infinity, right? Um, I live in the Philippines, and so there was a lot of buzz around like scholarships, guilds, and managers, the entire system, right? Which YGG pioneered, right? So during that time, left and right, you would enter a random restaurant and you would hear people saying that they actually want to become part of a guild, right? And so that hit us, or that hit me actually, that if everyone's just wanting to play and to get like these assets, or there are like managers who would want to buy assets for their scholars, and everyone wants to create a guild, right? Then maybe there needs to be like a player who would actually be supplying these assets. And so we actually pitched this idea to an investor. And so we started with like a proof of concept, tried it, and then realized that we're actually making a lot more money producing these assets, because we can then optimize for specific traits after identifying like the math behind it. And then we can actually sell them directly to the guilds. So it became like a B2B solution where we produce these assets, wait for them to actually hatch, and then like sell them off to the guilds. And so that ultimately became the start of like BreederDAO. Like we were basically selling to friends, and then friend of a friend, and then like eventually we're selling to all the major guilds, right? So yeah, that's how we basically started. Started really off with just playing, and then like identifying an opportunity and a gap in the market, and then now like working on like producing these assets, but also expanding to not just playable characters, but eventually skins, wearables, and every other asset that can be seen like within games and within like virtual worlds.
Very cool. So what for Renz, what other games besides Pegaxy or Pegaxy do you service right now?
Yeah, so right now there's not a lot. I guess there's most of these games, if not all, have already slowed down. And some of them have even like stopped operations, right? But we did a bunch of stuff. We did like Titan Arena, Krabada as well. Geno Pets, Crypto Unicorns. If you were like at the height of like maybe 2021 to 2022 or early 2022, you would be familiar with like a bunch of like these projects that I'm talking about. But we're actually more excited about the future, because the initial iteration of these games, and I guess Corey can attest to this, is that everyone was like following the same template from the success of the original game, right? And there was really not a lot of innovation, right? So people were all just copy pasting an already quote unquote proven model, which created like the success for Axie, or like similar to Axie, right? And Pegaxy as well, right? Because they were like the first two games that actually came out, which really made like a huge, I guess, mark, and then it made the world known about like Web3 gaming in general. So yeah, I guess like in the future, what we're already seeing is that asset creation is going to be like core component of like these games, and games that are being developed right now are getting to the quality of the games that users would really want to play. And so we really believe like in the future, while the asset prices wouldn't be as insane as before, where I guess like Corey, a horse would cost like 2,500, right? Or even actually would cost like $800, and you would like in 3 years, right, in order to place it, that's like 2,400. Like these prices wouldn't be standardized across like every single asset. Only the rare ones, for example, would actually even reach these prices. But there will be an opportunity to generate these assets, and there will be buyers for these kinds of assets. It's not only do they want to play them, but they also kind of want to collect them in a way, because these are like assets that they get to own, and they can verify. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like as a kid where I did most of my gaming, I'm sure like it's something that you thought might, in your dreams might happen or something like that, and then now it seems like it's actually coming to reality. Like one of the games that I used to play Pokemon all my life growing up, and then I recently, like a couple months, or whenever the new game came out, I got the Switch and I got the Pokemon Scarlet, and I was like, wow, like
Same
this
with
is
me.
everything I wanted when I was a kid, like things that I wanted
Yep.
to do that I thought like, oh, like maybe, like I guess it's not possible yet, but now it's
Right.
it's so intuitive, and the game is just really freaking cool. Like it's a great game, and I guess what for you guys both, what were your games growing up, and like what games do you still play nowadays?
Renz?
Oh, okay. I'll take that then. Yeah, so growing up, like I guess it's mostly like FPS games for me. Counter-Strike, all of that, right? So I guess I was always fascinated with like, killing people like within game and being able to get like the top score or getting into the leaderboard. Not in real life, just in like games, Corey. But
Right.
yeah, FPS for me. And I guess like just like you, like Pokemon, all of the I guess every single generation I've played, sometimes even both versions, because it usually comes out in pairs, right? MOBA as well is something that I've always liked. League of Legends, Dota 2, even Mobile Legends, right, is something that I played, and it's still playing, right? But the most recent one I played and which I really love is like Honkai, which is by Hoyoverse, right? It's I guess very unique in a way that you can play it on your mobile, but the graphics are of like different quality altogether, right? Genshin kind of like introduced that, and the same group is now introducing like this game called Honkai, which actually made a ton of like money, right? And it's interesting for me because they've already started teasing about like all of these concepts, like there's a like metaverse or drops of like hints of like this metaverse into the game. It's becoming
Mm.
more and more like it's interesting because the conversations are becoming more and more real. These are conversations that you would not only exist or you would not only see like within these games, but can also, see like in real life, right? Conversations that you would normally have with your friends. And, for me, like the barrier or like the gap between like, what's digital and what's physical is becoming closer and closer. And, the experiences that we're having, at least in the digital world, is becoming more and more immersive that in the future I don't think like we'll be able to really differentiate, or even if we can, right, we'll actually value or we'll actually place like significant value as well on like this digital experiences that we have, because previously like it's been I guess like it's actually really far, right? Like it's actually digital, and the experience of digital doesn't really compare to how you do it in physical. But as we actually develop the technology as a whole, right, we're now seeing that digital is becoming more and more like realistic and more immersive. That sometimes you just want to stay like in the digital versus like the physical. So yeah, that's like one of the things that I really see, like especially being very I guess parent like within games.
I just played COD, to be honest. Just like a shit ton of COD. That was about it. And then sometimes Minecraft, when you get in those vibes where you want to build some stuff, and then you just abandon it and come back to it in 3 years, and you're like, I remember this place. Yeah. So it was just like COD. And then unfortunately, I tried to be a pilot in the Air Force, so I started studying hard in like grade 10, and I was like, no games. And then like who would have guessed I wouldn't become a pilot, and then I'd be building games. Like God, it's so ironic, but yeah. So it was just COD, man.
Full
COD
circle.
owned my life, yeah. And then I didn't even become a pilot. Sad times, but mine's not very cool. No.
Hey, I mean, everyone's got their own story and their own path. I guess on top of that, Corey, for your game right now, who plays it? Tell me a little bit more about the game, and if you were obviously like me, someone who's never played it before, if you had to give like a little bit of rundown on what it's like to play the game, who plays, why they play, things like that. I'd love to hear about it.
Sure. So I guess when the initial version was out, so we have like two versions. We had the first one, which has been sunset. So the first version was a large demographic, I would say 80% split between Philippines and Brazil. Because of the financial side of things within the game, the desire was to earn money through playing the game. And then a vast majority of the funds, so out of the $200 million, I would say $180 million would have been split between the Western world, so US, UK. Actually, Singapore was a big one as well, and Australia. So usually the countries where their average spend is quite high, it's just the typical scenario. They came in and spent a lot of money in it, and a lot of the everyday players were from developing countries like Philippines and Brazil. And then in the next version, we're obviously taking a more traditional casual game approach. So for all three games, actually for Pegaxy, our IP is well known in the Philippines. So we are blessed enough to be able to penetrate it a bit easier for a bit cheaper. So we will definitely have a focus there. However, the US just spends a lot, or the Western world in general just spends a lot. So obviously we'll be targeting those types of players, and the introduction of in-app purchases, in-app advertising will exist in these casual games as well that we're developing. And for the players, for the people who haven't played, sorry, it's just essentially a horse racing game with inspiration from like Crash Team Racing or Mario Kart as well. This is the kind of emotion that we want to give, and make it I wouldn't say casual, more like a mid-core game where people are quite attached to their characters and they're willing to trade back and forth. For the other two games, one of them's inspired by Arch Hero. I know Renz spent a stupid amount of money on that game. Yep, and so we're building, I guess, a bit more of a hardcore version. And the third one is actually inspired by like Tamagotchi and Pokemon Go, just caring like Habbo Hotel type of vibes, right? Just a quite casual game with some pets in it. So that basically summarizes it. Yeah.
That's cool. I haven't heard the Tamagotchi name in a while. That's
Been a while.
definitely a flash from the past.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, big time. But yeah, I mean the customization factor, I think that's the sky's the limit, so to speak. And then obviously racing games, it's like who doesn't love, something like Mario Kart or
Right. Classics.
the F1 games, and I mean they're just something that even like my dad would play, like even
Timeless, I think.
exactly, like he could come down to the basement where me and my brother would beat him in every game we'd play, but he would still enjoy like a racing game. So
It's not pick up or anything, right? It's just like
yeah,
you know how to race, you got to win. That's the goal. There's not much. It's not very complicated. Just win the race. That's what we want.
yeah. And then adding the customization factor is something that hopefully will keep players coming back because they feel attached, and if they can make money, which is brand new, part of gaming, then they're definitely going to be coming back.
Obviously, it's not guaranteed. Like I think where Renz's team's technology really does come into play is obviously the customization, and it revolves around interactions and retention. So it helps someone like us quite a bit. But the money side of things is primarily based on speculation for sure. It's not so much you just play and you earn money. That was the original thesis. We were very wrong. So now to be completely honest with you, it just comes back to like when you played WoW, for example. These people will grind their accounts for 1,000 hours. Someone out there wants an account with 1,000 hours in it because they've done the bullshit. They will buy it. That's really the speculation. Now you need to try to get a decent price for it. Similar situation, bro. But the blockchain basically doesn't require any talking or any risky shit or give me your card details, send me the PayPal before I transfer your account. The blockchain is just permissionless. You don't need anyone. It's like, put it up, I'll buy it. No talking. And it solves a lot of things. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I guess for Renz, this technology, what do you see its uses going forward? I know I saw something that maybe there was an investment I recognize the name Andreessen Horowitz.
The biggest in the game. The biggest. Yeah, that's a good one.
So I saw that on the kind of on the PR when I was learning about you and some of the things. I know one of them was on. What was Andreessen? Where does he come into play? I think he had he was on the Rogan podcast at one point, and he like I forget his background. Do you guys remember?
I think he's a big IT company. He used to own a massive IT company, right, Renz? And then he sold it for a couple billion, and then that's when he started A16Z with a partner. But I think A16Z, maybe Renz knows a little bit more about A16Z, but their background is, they're investing in everything right now, the biggest of the biggest. So it's quite a massive name, yeah.
Yeah, I think they draw from their experience as founders as well, right? Like the struggles they had as founders, and then how they want to eventually translate those. And I guess from A16Z portcos companies, right? You actually can feel like the support that they actually give to you, right? And drawing from their experience, right, where usually during the down times or during what we call like bear cycles, right? It's where founders usually struggle a lot, not just in terms of capital, but also like identifying like a product market fit, right? And so, for us, like as their portco, you can really feel the immense support from the team as an extension of your own team, right? Being able to ask, someone from their team about every single subject or every single matter at hand, right? Where, if you need someone who can help you with recruitment, they would actually offer that. If you need someone who can help you run through things about, how best to actually push it to the market or how best to comps it out, they also have that, right? Like, yeah, ultimately, all of these came from their experiences like founders, where they also struggled and they also had like a hard time, but eventually became successful as well themselves and started to realize that they can actually do more. Holding like or creating like a venture fund, like, and being able to help founders who are also struggling but have like huge potential. So yeah.
And so I guess for your technology, and I guess should give me a little bit of how to explain it a little bit more, just because I'm so out of this world a little bit. How would you explain this technology to someone that doesn't know anything about it, in your words or in your layman's terms?
Yeah, I guess we're building a bunch of like different products. The main one is actually a bit straightforward, where the idea is that if you're manufacturing things, right, you need like equipment or machineries to do so, right? The idea of being able to mass produce assets that are previously not available is something that we kind of pioneered at the start, right? Being able to create like tools that will help you scale your operations and identify like the best possible combinations is one that we actually built ourselves, and we actually in a way like use internally, right? And eventually this sort of machinery is going to be made public, right? Or like will actually enable like people to also use them to be able to identify like builds, acquire like or interpret like data in forms that's easily digestible, so that they're able to also produce their own assets with their own liking, right? Um, the second product that we're also working on, outside of the creation or mass creation of like digital asset, is more on like our digital playable characters. It would be on the skins side, right? So wearable. So I guess it's not a surprise that skins have always been the bread and butter of like a bunch of these games, right? Sometimes you don't earn from like the game itself, but you earn from like selling these skins, right? Because people inherently want to look good, right? But what's very different from the way we're doing it now is that we're also introducing like a UGC component, because previously the very definition of games or skins within games is for your character to look good, right? Because even if you can't play like really well, as long as like you look good, at least like you die fashionably, right, or something like that. But yeah, right now, if you're able to customize like the same set of like skins, the same set of like wearables, then what Corey was saying about like being attached to that character makes much more sense, right? Because that character is now a representation of yourself. You actually embedded your identity into the character, and you can actually customize not only the look of that avatar, but how every single aspect of the avatar, the headgear, the armor, right, kind of represents you, right? It could be your style, it could be your own face plastered on like the armor itself, right? Or it could even be as simple as like a branding or an identity that you attach yourself, much like we see in like esports organization, right? The idea of like decentralizing the asset creation process and being able to take an asset from a particular world and bring the same one to a different world, just changing how it looks or how it's actually used, right? Be it in the form of like cosmetic or an actual weapon. It's something that is made possible by blockchain, right? The attempts of individuals before to adapt like the same assets from a singular game isn't really something that would fly before, because developers would always think about revenue, right? If I actually bring in like already existing assets, then I would actually lose in revenue, right? But now people are seeing that adopting like these new assets or these old assets from like a different game allows me to create or to do vampire attacks on these like already existing games, right? Whereby if I don't have like an initial user base and I actually allow them to use the same characters into this platform of mine, then in a way I'm able to attract them or create that initial base of like characters, right? Or base of users rather. So yeah, for us it's really about like being able to attach your identity to all of these assets, to be able to customize it in your own liking, in your own style, and ultimately be able to use that across like the different games that you actually play. Because we believe in the idea that eventually our digital identity will be as crucial, if not more important than our physical ones, because these will actually allow us to go to further places or farther places, and like will allow us to, or will open up like new opportunities for us as well.
I mean, I guess that is already true in a lot of ways, and it's a little scary and uncomfortable to think where it could go, but also exciting because I think the opportunities are more, and it's going to give a lot of different opportunities to a lot of different people. Probably going to create a lot of different problems that we'll have to solve as well, but we've already seen that with technology and social media and things like that. But in general, where do you guys go next from here, and what do gamers need to know about Mirai Labs or Pegaxy coming forward, and then what do gamers need to know about the products that you're going to be offering, Renz?
I guess if you want to play Pegaxy. It'll be available. V2 isn't public now, but it will be available. And then there is no necessity to experience the Web3 side. We have the foundation of a complete game. But if you want to extend the gameplay beyond that, if you like speculation, if you like to involve money, but not give it directly to us, then you have the full ability to do it. And obviously, as new technology develops, especially from the BreederDAO team, the experience will get far superior. However, of course, for us, this is a very long game. Ironically, I don't mean game, literally get the game, but it takes a long time to develop something like this. So for sure, these early versions that people will see, I mean, you can feel free to judge it, feel free to play it, but our vision is far, far grander. So play all the games that we release just to try to understand the experiences. I'm sure many people who do watch this will probably not like Web3, and I can understand why. Because some of the people in Web3 say some pretty insane things, try to sell Web3 and push it onto other people. But I think both of us, Renz and myself, are here trying to just provide solutions and different experiences to them and not force them to do anything that they don't want to do, just enhance what already exists. So yeah, if you want to see possibly a new experience within a game, then that's what we're trying to do. Everything Mirai Labs does, play it.
And how does someone get involved? Like if they watch this interview and they want to play the game right away after it, what would they have to do?
We obviously have like the Discord community, and they're the ones who usually get early access, right? So yeah, I would say dive into Discord and ask us. You can reach out to me, obviously, personally on Twitter or something like that. I'm sure I can get you access as well. But it is like we restrict it to like 100 players at a time because we're obviously collecting data on shit is breaking all the time, right? So we need to fix it. So we don't want 100,000 players in there and they're all like, your stuff's broken. And I'm like, I know. So that's where we are right now. It's probably like 3 or 4 months out until it's like fully open. So if they watch it now, in 3 to 4 months' time, then just go download it from the App Store. If not, then just reach out to us and I'll maybe let you in. I don't know.
Exclusive.
That's it.
Renz, what about you? What else should gamers know about the products that you have right now, and what's next for you guys? What do you have on your horizon?
Sure. We actually call ourselves, or at least BreederDAO, like the factory of the metaverse for good reason, right? We anchor ourselves with the idea of like mass creation and customization, essentially allowing users to, create the way they play, right? We started with allowing users to create their own playable characters, creating their own representations or digital representations, right? We're now moving into the idea of like customizing or allowing them to create their own look or their own style, right? Or create their own fashion within like these digital worlds. Eventually, where we want to go is that, we want to allow you to create your own strategy, create your own experience, create your own like whatever, right? But it's really more on the empowering users to be able to build, because assets ultimately are the building blocks, and we are a factory for a reason, right? We want to enable users to create all sorts of assets in whatever form, in whatever shape, into their own liking, without having to spend a lot of resources outside of their usual capacity. So yeah, I guess like Pegaxy is one of the games that we're actually partnered with, but we're partnered with a lot more. The goal is to be able to provide assets across the different metaverses and across the different worlds that people will sooner or later will learn about, and that will actually be spending more time like in these worlds more than our physical or real life. So yeah, for us, like it's really about like reshaping the way people create their assets, and adding on that customizability, allowing you to own your identity, own the way you play, and ultimately properly representing yourselves, right?
In short, really quick, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think the perfect way to explain BreederDAO with the context of Pegaxy is if we produce a game where there's a really rare asset that everybody wants. BreederDAO has the ability to get together as a team, figure out how to produce that asset, and create supply for that insane demand. That I think personally, from at least their first product is a very easy way to explain it in layman terms for people who maybe are coming from the outside and don't understand why people want this stuff for Web3. Just imagine something really rare inside of a game. A lot of these Web3 economies allow you to create or produce assets in the game through playing. And the BreederDAO team is exceptionally good at playing these games, believe it or not, and they know exactly how to produce these assets as well. And then someone possibly like me, or even just like Renz, who is willing to spend money to get that rare asset, will come to them and buy it so that they can get in, possibly with a head start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of actually talking about, the original, and I guess like the first product that we actually, offered to the market. Yeah. Like, yeah. Expanding more than that, like it's really about like asset creation and giving the power back to the users to be able to create themselves, right?
Yeah, I think going back to how you explained it in terms of like Roblox, and people know that game, obviously, especially the younger generation seems to freaking go crazy for it. So I think that's a a good tie there that will help people explain. And honestly, the possibilities as I understand them and listening to what you guys have to say are, again, endless. And I think the future is going to look pretty crazy as we go forward with both games and ideas and the technology around them. And yeah, but again, I appreciate you both taking the time today to get on the call. I hope to send you guys some an article and this published on our website for Outsider Gaming. So
I was hoping you were going
I'll
to say merch. I want some merch.
I honestly, I'm hoping that
Send it
we get some
over.
merch coming in soon. That was
All right.
part of the plan, that everyone in these interviews will have merch in the future. But right now we're just starting. But absolutely, I think that's in the future for us.
All right, a merch swap. It's a deal.
Absolutely, I love that.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Very nice to talk to you.
Likewise, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening on your end.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good day for you.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.